There's been a lot of news recently surrounding Star Wars, with Rey coming back into the fold, and a lot of different interviews surrounding the Star Wars Celebration Live in Europe 2023. And I've been watching some of these interviews, and I just cannot wrap my head around some of the things that have been stated about Star Wars. And to kind of help me talk about that, I brought my good friend Don. So thanks for coming, brother. How have you been feeling about the Star Wars Celebration stuff? Have you watched any of this?
Dude, recently it feels like I've been tapped out, and I just saw all the news coming out from this recent Star Wars Celebration, and it doesn't feel like Star Wars is learning from any of their mistakes, and then two, you get to get a glimpse of the knowledge or the ideology behind some of the people that are working behind this, and then you realize, oh yeah, that's why it's not changing direction, because you literally have zero IQ takes when it comes to Star Wars from these creators from the top up or from the top down. So, like, if anything, it's just an eye-opener that if you thought Star Wars was on its last lifeline or is like on life support, it's been dead. It is dead. It's not coming back.
One of the things I wanted to specifically talk about today was this clip, and I'll play it for us because you initially stated zero IQ takes. This has got to be one of the worst ones I'd heard throughout the entire celebration. So here it is.
Now, without spoiling the show, can you tell me, describe the Acolyte in 5 words?
I would say a battle for power. I mean, the best parts about Star Wars is there is no good or evil. It depends on what side you're standing on, truly. You know what I mean? You can look at any angle and see yourself relayed through all the characters, Darth to Luke. You know what I'm saying?
Unreal, man. Unreal. So even me who watched that clip, I was like, no, that's like absolutely inherently wrong. Like, George Lucas, when he created Star Wars, I'm pretty sure he wanted a very specific divide between good and evil, light and dark. Fundamentally, these vacuous, empty-headed losers don't understand the creation at its core. And that's what's so upsetting. And I think that's why we have seen a degradation in the Star Wars property itself, is that the people who are creating it don't fundamentally understand it. Am I wrong in saying that? Or give me your thoughts when you saw that clip.
I mean, I think that's a big criticism that people have towards the first trilogy of Star Wars, that it's so simplified, good versus bad, Empire versus Rebels, right? It's so clear down the middle, like, this is the bad side, this is the good side. Listen, you're in a universe where the Force users, one considers themselves using the light side or the light side of the Force, and the other one is the dark side. And if that's not made more clear, using the dark side, you become a hideous monster as you go and you delve deeper into it. You see Anakin getting his yellow eyes, and he becomes more evil as he consumes this side of the Force. Fundamentally, this man does not understand. And the funny part of it is, actually, I'll just break down his quote here at the beginning. He goes, it's a struggle for power, which that is true. That's what this is, or like, I enjoy that part of Star Wars as well. But he says the best parts of Star Wars is that there's no good or evil. That's not, he might have just, shoved his whole foot down his throat there, not even just in his mouth. But that's not the best part of it. And second, the good and evil, there is good and evil. That's the reason why you can sympathize with Darth Vader, is that he's on the evil side and he's some person that has a redeemable quality to him. But there is good and there is evil. The Emperor, and that's the other thing with his quote, you can see yourself from every you can relate through every angle of the character. I guess I'm just sitting here with Sheev Palpatine. I'm like, oh yeah, I can really relate with the long fingernails or something. What can you relate with the Palpatine for?
Once the dark side has fully enveloped you, like, that is what you turn into, is Palpatine, this evil, figure who's literally parading around stormtrooper Nazis, like, that is a very bad side to be on. So, and that's what I see in Hollywood a lot, man, is this like creation of gray, and there's no real morality or virtue of this is good and this is evil. And I wonder if it is because a lot of these actors, and like you said earlier, there's that like top-down leadership of maybe what we're doing is kind of bad, but its morality is gray, and it's like that's how they're also making the films as well. And it seems very misguided.
taking that aside, what the actor is saying here, you know, we see this from the top down of what Lucasfilm is doing, and I think there's room for gray stories, like, and I think you would agree with that as well. I like some gray stories where it's, you know, who's really good in this situation. But Star Wars is something. It's not like everything. And I think a lot of people at Star Wars are trying to make Star Wars for everybody, about everything, or, you know, it's trying to reach everything. It's trying to be about, you know, strong female characters while also being gray morally, while also being fun and wacky and dark and gritty. It's like, no, you got to really figure your flavor out, which George Lucas did have a flavor for it. It's the reason why it became the most profitable franchise, you know, at its current time than any other in Hollywood, is because it had such a great, simple formula, which did have the good versus evil aspect of it. And the good versus evil can be done right. I think a lot of people just view it as child storytelling, kind of, right? When you have good, evil, good, bad, light, dark. It's like, no, you can do it well, and it gives you something to aspire to. How many gray stories really inspire you to do what's right? I'm sure there's great examples of it, but that's the thing about Star Wars. It really just kind of, it's like, oh, it's so uplifting to, you know, do the right thing. Kind of like Lord of the Rings. You could not say the same thing about Lord of the Rings, could you? Be like, there's no really good and evil side. It's a space fantasy, you know?
You know, the orcs are just misunderstood. Saruman, he's just trying to use Sauron's power for good. Don't you see? It's like, no. That's
the
not,
best
that's
part
not
of Lord of the Rings is there's no good and evil. You can look at any angle and see yourself through all the characters. Yeah, I'm sitting there as Lurch going like, oh, yeah, this Boromir's going to take another arrow to the chest, bitch.
It's very subjective. Sauron is a tortured soul, and it's like, no, dude, he's just pure evil. That's just what he is. And that's like you said about being, you know, having gray stories and having black and white stories. There are moments for those gray movies, like look at the comic book series Watchmen. And I know that that's a typical trope to fall onto, but it's probably the most popular and the most well-known, so most people will understand it. But Watchmen is a very gray film and a very gray comic. But if I want something lighthearted, if I want Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, I don't want Watchmen. They are diametrically opposed from each other in terms of vibe, feel, emotional weight. You leave Watchmen thinking like, oh man, yeah, what is good and evil? But you leave Lord of the Rings and Star Wars inspired to be a better person, right? You know, and that's what I think a lot of this is missing.
Yeah, and Star Wars, as soon as that umbrella, if it tries to become larger and larger, encompass every kind of like aspect of storytelling, it stops becoming what Star Wars is. You know, it's like, no, that's not Star Wars. You know, there's a formula to it. And I do think it even boils down to the aesthetics you see in some of this part of like George Lucas's vision. I think I love that part of it because it feels so distinct. Just like Warhammer has its own distinct future feel, I feel like Star Wars, you know, as we were talking about, is becoming this bigger umbrella, is encompassing everything. It's just becoming generic sci-fi to a degree.
It looks just like Marvel stuff. Like it looks like Marvel or SNL. Like, you know, I was gonna joke and I was gonna say, Don, are you telling me that puppet, you know, Baby Yoda Grogu doing backflips in a Mandalorian episode, that's Star Wars, isn't it? Because he's a puppet. Get it? And it's like, no, you're taking the wrong, like, it's not because it's a puppet that makes it Star Wars. The reason why it looks like and feels like Star Wars is because they're practical sets, or maybe the world feels lived in, or maybe the characters look like they come from that universe. Not, oh, it's a puppet. Get it? They use puppets in the 70s. It's Star Wars. And it's like, no, you're pulling the wrong thing from this.
Now, a lot of Lucasfilm feels like they're pulling the wrong lessons from what they feel like a lot of backlash came from the prequel trilogy.
They're wise enough to see the criticisms of their films and then keep the things that are criticized and change other things.
Overall, I think Star Wars has, like you said earlier, been dead. It will continue to either dig its own grave, or people will come to realize this is not what I signed up for. This is not the Star Wars that I've always loved and watched since a child. And I think that sucks, because more people are kind of coming to that conclusion every single day. We're seeing that with Mandalorian. We're seeing that with announcements with Rey coming back into the fold. It feels like people daily are losing their interest in Star Wars and saying it is dead. And I think it's because of interviews like this and actors and directors and writers who know nothing about Star Wars fundamentally that continue to corrupt it and make it something it's not. So thank you again for Don for coming on the show. I'll put his link in the description so you guys can go follow him, because he has some fantastic live streams and some excellent videos that he does. So definitely go follow him. Thank you guys again for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.